Um, Scotland voted to be independent twice.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have independence, so what does that mean? We voted
Mm-hmm.
twice
Mm-hmm.
for
But
independence. Yeah, will it be better? I don't know.
mm,
I don't.
mm,
Look, does Scotland have what it needs to be an independent country? Yes, I think it does.
mm,
Does it need to be independent? No, it will be weaker. It's not going to be so strong as part of Britain. I mean, Britain is being broken up into
mm,
different parts, and
mm,
look, I'm a nationalist at heart. I think the idea of an independent
mm,
Scotland is a very good idea. But I'm also 45 and a realist, and I
mm,
I don't think it's practical. It's all it's all fantasy.
mhm,
It's all fantasy. It's there are no countries. There are no countries. There is land and there are people. Countries are arbitrary decisions made by people about where something stops and where something starts. Um, it's a it's a print on the brain. There is no Scotland, there is no England, there is no Wales, there is no Ireland, there is no Northern Ireland. There's just land and people. There's
yeah.
just land and people. And the countries are much less important than individual relationships with people. Countries are why people fight wars, right? Oh, the Brits hate the Germans, so it's a good reason to have a war,
Mhm,
right?
mm,
You know, Liverpool versus Manchester United, it's a good reason to have a war. Scotland versus England is a good reason to have a war. It's
mhm,
it doesn't matter anymore.
mhm,
Maybe at some point in time it was important, but it doesn't matter anymore. The people will never get to decide about their own future. There's
mhm,
it's just games.
mhm,
What does it mean to be Scottish? I don't know. It doesn't.
mhm,
National identity.
mhm.
National identity is just another form of narcissistic psychopathy. It really is. You're either a nice person or you're not.
Mm,
The country that you come from, the job that you do is irrelevant. You're either a
mhm.
nice person or
Yes.
you're not.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. Mhm.
You're nice and kind and have empathy and you help people, or you don't. There are good and bad people everywhere. There are good and bad Scottish people. There are good and bad English people. There are good and bad French
Mm,
people. It's not about. See, most conflict is not real.
mhm,
Oh, it happens, but the reasons for it are fantasy.
mm,
They are from this town and we are from this town and why are
mm,
you fighting, guys? I mean, it's
mm,
because you're from different towns. It's not really why you're fighting. You're fighting because you're men and you're angry and you don't know what to do about it. That's why
mm,
you're fighting. And women do the same thing, but in a different way. All
mm.
right. But yeah, it's just another crazy reason to do something. I don't think that countries matter anymore. Maybe it was different in the past when
Mm.
people were much more territorial, but we have a, dare I say, we have a global spirit now
Mm. Mhm.
where where we understand that most people are dealing with the same problems. Doesn't matter where you go in the world, people have
Mm.
very similar problems. And so that's the issue. When people start talking about countries, it's just manipulation. It's just
Mm.
it's manipulation.
Mm.
It's land of hope and glory. What do these songs mean? And God save the Queen. What do they
Mhm.
mean anymore? They mean anything to anybody? What is England? What is Scotland? What is Germany? What is Holland? What is Canada? It's it's a collective term for people who have similar habits. Well, no, it's just geography, right?
Exactly.
It's just a place. It's a part of the world,
Mm.
and it's a way of it's a name. It's a name for the farm.
Mhm.
It's a name for the farm, and the people are are the animals who are organized there. It, it's got 50 years of international travel has created global cultures, and the result is that everyone everywhere is mixed. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's not a bad
Mhm.
idea, in my opinion, to do that around the world, to help people to see that they're not as different as they think that they are. Um, it's good, like those student exchange programs where people can go and spend 6 months in a different country and study there. It's great,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yes.
It's great to have these opportunities. But when people talk about countries now, we have to defend our country. It's no longer that kind of world. It's
Mm.
corporations are bigger than countries. Corporations are the motivation now. You get up and go to work for your company, not for your country.
Mhm.
So I breaking things from bigger into smaller does two things. Number one, the smaller thing is less strong,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
number two, it becomes more manageable. So,
Mhm. Mm.
and you can look at the world and you can see like Russia.
Mm.
It's too big, right? It's too big to have one rule and set of rules across such a large area. It should be, I don't know, five, six, seven countries or states or something like that.
Mm.
It's just too crazy like that. But it's just about management and organization now. Um, it's it's crazy. What are people fighting for, right? You no one no one's going to fight for their country anymore because look at you. Are you going to fight for Slovakia? I don't think so. No offense, but You're not going to go out, you're not going to go out and do
Mm.
that.
Mm. Yeah.
And you are like most people in your country. They're not going to do that. I'm not going to go out and fight for Scotland. That's just silly, really. Um, because people are people. I'm not going to go and fight against them. It doesn't make any sense to me
Mm.
to fight for that. Certain concepts of freedom and liberty are important to keep and are worth fighting for. But the national concepts anymore, it's just management and reorganization. Europe is one big corporation.
Mm.
It's just one big corporate
Mm.
entity now, and it doesn't really matter. Is Scotland being independent going to help anybody? I don't think so. You might sell more little flags, and T-shirts with Scotland written on it, and it seems to be a good way to mobilize people and make money. But um, is Britain really getting out of Europe? I'm not even sure Britain's really getting
Mm.
out of Europe. I mean, it's questionable. I mean, 99% of things will stay exactly the same,
Mm.
I think. It's in Europe or out of Europe. As I said, Europe is a corporation now. It's run by corporate entities. People do what their company tells them to do. They don't do what their government tells them to do. They do what their company tells
Mhm.
them to do.
Mhm.
So so I'm not sure who is getting out of what. Does it have any benefit to people? There's a very strong argument for one of the reasons why we have this virus is to stop nationalism.
Mm.
To stop nationalism because, oh, Britain wanted out of Europe, and Ireland wanted out of Europe, and Spain wanted out of Europe, and the United States wanted out of its global treaties and things. And there was a growing in Brazil as well. They wanted out of a lot of these global treaties, which they said were unfair. And if they all got out,
Mm.
then that would be a problem for the globalist movement. And so
Mhm.
this virus keeps everyone
Mhm. That's a
together because we need globalism because it's a global problem. Um, but then but then everybody is in the same boat. Everybody's in the same ship, and there's only one ship.
Mhm.
And so that's not good because if there's only one ship, if there's only one country, if there's only one company, oh, we're straight back into Marxism and socialism. And Marxism, socialism, and democracy are all roads to communism. It's a fact. Marxism,
Oh.
socialism, and
Oh.
democracy
Oh.
are all
Oh.
roads to communism.
Mm.
They're all roads to some form of dictatorship. Only constitutional republican principles stand to, at this moment, help create something different, um, which is the people are not in control. So they can't do anything wrong if the people are not in control. But it's it's a difficult it's difficult because if you follow the connections between everything, and you can, it takes time, but you can see where does this go and where does that go and where does that lead to and which organizations are these organizations part of and how does it all connect together, and you end up with a map that pretty much has China sitting on top of the world right now. And personally for me, I'm not sure that's a good thing. I'm not sure that's a good thing because if you look at the Chinese model, there's not much liberty, there's not much freedom, there's not much of any of that there. They have their prison camps for their Christians and for their Muslims and for their own people. They have their slave factories for their women. It's a pretty terrible place, really.
Yes.
And there's once again, people don't know their history. Following World War II, a lot of the larger global institutions and corporations made deals with China to support China in return for a long-term growth plan where China would become the dominant force worldwide. And slowly, very slowly over time, a new picture of the world evolves to have more and more Chinese-orientated influences in Western culture. It's a long, slow process. And we are at a point right now where a lot of the large global pharmaceutical companies, you look at their boards of directors, right? Look at where those people are from. The people at the top, right? Look at where they're from. Look at who they make deals with. And so it's been the real, just the same way that countries are fantasies. The person you are told is your enemy is not your enemy. Your enemy is the person telling you who your enemy is. That's who your enemy is. Your enemy is the person instructing you and educating you that you have enemies, rather than working with you to ensure that you don't have enemies. And so when everybody was pointing fingers at Russia during the Cold War, Russia is this big enemy, it wasn't. It really wasn't. It wasn't really the enemy. It was somewhere else. It's the same way that a lot of people make money from gambling, on other people's gambling. stock markets as well. It's just another form of gambling on people's
Mm.
lives and futures. The buying and selling of bonds and companies, and it's just a big game there.
Mm.
And yeah, try to find some anti-China literature. It's really difficult.
Mm.
Look for anti-American literature. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
You look for some
Mm.
anti-China literature. You can't find any.
Mm. Mm.
Right. So I mean, it's your enemy is not the person that you're told is your enemy. Right. Something it's all this media telling women that men are the problem, and all this media telling men that women are the problem. The problem is the media,
Mhm. Mhm.
not the ideas of the men and the ideas of the women. Because everybody can work together to to solve problems, which is the good side of everything. But um, we we live in very uncertain times.